Welcome to Echo of Crime YouTube channel. The sun had barely risen over Pollock, Louisiana, when the guards at the United States Penitentiary began their morning head count. It was routine. The same numbers, the same faces, the same lock cells. But that morning, one number didn't add up. Cell 135 was empty. The man who was supposed to be inside was Richard Lee McNair, a convicted killer serving a life sentence without parole. To the guards, he was just another inmate. Quiet, polite, always on time for work in the prison's mailroom. But McNair wasn't just doing his job. He was studying, watching, calculating. For months, he had observed everything. When guards switched shifts, where cameras pointed, how mail trucks came and went, and which security checks were performed automatically, and which were done lazily. He learned that the mailroom was the one place inside the prison that handled thousands of sealed bags a week, all inspected, but never opened once they were labeled and loaded for transport. McNair realized he didn't need to run through fences or tunnels. He just needed to become the mail. He started small, testing the system with harmless tricks. He'd place objects inside sealed mail bags and see if they were caught during inspection. They never were. He noticed that once the bags were wrapped in plastic film and stacked on wooden pallets, they became just another bulk shipment heading outside. So he began preparing his masterpiece. Using the limited supplies available to inmates, McNair built a breathing compartment inside one of the mail bags, layers of thin plastic wrap reinforced with tape and cardboard. He even added a small ventilation hole disguised under layers of packaging so he could breathe while hidden inside. He planned everything down to the minute. He knew which day the mail trucks left the facility. He knew how long it would take for the bags to clear inspection. He even timed how long he could hold his breath if the air hole got blocked. On the morning of April 5, 2006, McNair walked into the prison mailroom like it was any other day. He helped load bags, stack boxes, and worked efficiently, calm, quiet, invisible. But before the final shipment went out, he slipped into his hiding space, sealed himself inside, and waited. For nearly 3 hours, McNair lay motionless inside a wrapped stack of mail bags, heart pounding in the dark, listening to the sounds of guards talking just feet away. At one point, a correctional officer even tapped the bag he was hiding in, checking for loose packaging, but didn't notice anything unusual. Moments later, a forklift lifted the pallet and placed it onto the truck bound for the outside world. No alarms, no suspicion, just another routine shipment leaving the prison gates. By the time anyone realized McNair was missing, he was already 20 miles away, breathing fresh air for the first time in years. But his escape wasn't luck, it was logic. He had mapped the system from the inside out and turned the prison's own efficiency against itself. He didn't climb walls or break locks. He became invisible. What the FBI and U.S. Marshals didn't know was that McNair had prepared for everything. New identities, false stories, even a backup plan if he was ever caught on the road. And in the weeks ahead, he'd prove that outsmarting a prison was only the beginning. When the guards at Pollock Federal Prison finally discovered McNair's disappearance, panic erupted. By the time they confirmed he wasn't hiding anywhere inside, hours had passed. The trucks had already cleared the gates, crossed the interstate, and unloaded their shipments. The FBI and U.S. Marshal Service launched an immediate alert. Roadblocks were set up. Helicopters circled the nearby woods. Every correctional facility in Louisiana and neighboring states was warned to stay on alert for a white male, 47 years old, last seen wearing a prison maintenance uniform. But Richard McNair was already gone. He knew they would look for him on the highways, so he did the opposite. For days, he traveled by side roads, sleeping in abandoned barns, and scavenging small-town convenience stores. Using stolen clothes and discarded IDs, he slowly rebuilt a civilian identity, calm, organized, and invisible. Within 2 weeks, McNair had crossed into Mississippi, living off small amounts of cash he'd saved from prison work assignments. He dyed his hair, bought cheap clothes from a thrift shop, and introduced himself as Robert Jones, a traveling salesman. Every step of his plan relied on psychological control, not running faster, but blending smarter. He avoided security cameras, ATMs, and main bus routes. He even studied how fugitives were caught by watching news broadcasts in motel lobbies, adjusting his behavior accordingly. To anyone who met him, he was polite, charming, and forgettable. Exactly how he wanted it. Weeks later, while driving through Minot, North Dakota, McNair was pulled over by police officer Carl Bordelon for a routine traffic stop. His car had tinted windows and no license plate. The officer turned on his body camera and approached cautiously. The man behind the wheel smiled. "Morning, officer. I'm a runner, just traveling through." Bordelon asked for ID. McNair handed him a paper form with a fake name. His tone was calm, casual, even friendly. The officer started asking questions. Where he was headed, where he'd been staying, what kind of work he did. McNair answered every question with perfect timing and confidence, even making small jokes to put the officer at ease. After a few minutes, Bordelon noticed something strange. The man was sweating lightly, but his voice never shook. Still, nothing about him screamed, "Escapee." Eventually, the officer let him go. He wished him a good day and drove off, unaware that the man he'd just spoken to was one of the most wanted fugitives in America. Later that day, when the footage reached FBI headquarters, agents were stunned. The man had literally talked his way out of capture, face to face, recorded on camera. As McNair continued north, he kept changing names, jobs, and cars. He took small handyman gigs in Canada, lived in motels, and used fake paperwork to stay off the grid. He mailed letters to old acquaintances, taunting messages like, "Still free, still learning." The FBI called him a ghost with a sense of humor. Every few weeks, he seemed to vanish again, leaving behind nothing but brief sightings and small clues. Over the next 18 months, McNair became something of a myth. TV shows and newspapers covered his escape as one of the most brilliant nonviolent breakouts in U.S. history. And for a while, he seemed unstoppable. But intelligence is a double-edged sword, and arrogance would become his undoing. In late 2007, after more than a year on the run, McNair made a single mistake, one that would finally lead the FBI straight to him. A small town, a car parked just too long, and a sharp-eyed officer who refused to believe the story he was told. It was October 24th, 2007. The small town of Campbellton, New Brunswick, Canada, was quiet, just another cold, windy day near the northern border. A local police officer noticed a white Pontiac Grand Prix parked near an industrial area. The car's windows were fogged from the inside, the plates looked unfamiliar, and the driver seemed to be sleeping. When the officer approached, he saw a man with short, dyed hair and tinted glasses. "Morning," the officer said. "Everything all right here?" The man smiled, calm as ever. "Just resting, officer. I'm a traveling salesman." The officer asked for ID. McNair, who was going by Robert Jones now, handed over a fake Canadian driver's license. But something about it didn't feel right. The lamination was off. The address didn't match the region. The officer's instincts kicked in. He radioed in the name quietly while continuing small talk. Within minutes, a reply came through the channel. The ID was fake. But when he asked the man to step out of the car, McNair didn't run. He smiled again and said, "You got me." After more than 18 months on the run, the world's most elusive inmate was finally captured, quietly, without a chase, without a fight. Inside the car, investigators found maps, fake IDs, cash bundles, and a notebook full of handwritten notes, his log of where he'd been, what he'd learned, and how he'd stayed invisible. When the FBI reviewed the notebook, they realized how deep his thinking went. McNair had documented police patrol patterns, roadside camera placements, even behavioral notes about how officers reacted when he told jokes during stops. He had built a psychological playbook on law enforcement itself. In interviews after his arrest, McNair told reporters, "I didn't escape with force. I escaped with observation." He explained that everything he did was about understanding people, not beating them. He believed that if you could predict human behavior, you could manipulate systems, even ones built to contain you. When McNair was extradited back to the United States, prison officials knew they were not just bringing back a fugitive. They were bringing back a living lesson in how their systems could fail. He was immediately transferred to the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado, the high-security facility in the U.S. designed for inmates who can't be contained anywhere else. His new home was an 8 by 12-foot cell, with steel doors, no outside work programs, and no contact with other prisoners. Mail inspections were tripled. Every movement was logged. Every minute was monitored. Prison officers openly admitted they had changed national security procedures because of him. New inspection rules for mailrooms, loading bays, and maintenance areas were implemented across multiple federal facilities, all inspired by one man who saw the system from the inside and simply thought his way out. Even after his capture, McNair remained something of an enigma. He granted occasional interviews from prison, speaking calmly, never bragging, but always analyzing. He said he didn't regret escaping, but he did regret what it cost him: his freedom within himself. When asked how he managed to fool so many, he simply said, "Most people look, but they don't see." To this day, law enforcement agencies and criminology students still study his case as an example of nonviolent high-intelligence criminal behavior. Proof that sometimes the most dangerous inmate isn't the strongest or the angriest, but the most observant.